Just to give you some background, I've been in HR for over 20 years, primarily working in high growth environments, building growing teams. And I think, you think back on each experience and some of them have challenges, some of them are successful, some, experience some failures, but going through all of those, there's one constant that you really rely on, and it's the people that you hire and bring together that determine the success of your company. And so you really have to be intentional about designing each team and your talent strategy. So I'm excited to be here to talk about it today. So we are going to go through a very quick presentation before our discussion. I wanted to give you some insights into the Predictive Index did a CEO benchmarking survey for 2021 to look at some of the things that are on CEOs' minds, which is so important for us to know in the talent world, what our CEOs are concerned about for 2021. Then we're going to go through a talent strategy assessment, and it's just a quick little assessment of how your organization is faring in terms of talent strategy, and then we'll go through some action items. So for that, you will need a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll just go through a quick assessment. So first, 69% of companies are restructured during the pandemic. So it's no surprise that employee productivity is a major concern of CEOs. And these, restructuring always means new teams are formed, new problems to solve, and that's top of mind for us. 56% of CEOs say employees' performance is of high concern. So CEOs are focused on retaining employees and their customers and really looking to optimize the talent within the organizations. And then lastly, 97% of CEOs are allowing some degree of remote work going forward. And I think, this was once considered a perk for progressive companies, and this will definitely change the way that we think about teams, how we communicate, how we collaborate, and how we communicate our strategies across the base of the company. So I think about this quote. I don't know if you all binge watched any TV during the quarantine pandemic, but I binge watched The Last Dance, Michael Jordan. And this quote really resonated with me. Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships, excuse me. So if you think about, the team that you've been on, that's been the best team, and typically the characteristics are, alignment, shared commitment against goals, people are accountable to each other, they collaborate and respect each other, and it almost feels easy. And they don't happen by accident. They are intentionally designed. So, using data and having data to understand your talent, where gaps might exist around work that your people are being asked to do, and how you can coach players on the field to execute more effectively. So, that's really where the talent strategy comes into play. And when you think about talent strategy, when I'm talking to other folks, and I'm sure most people on this call are enlightened people leaders and adopting what we call talent optimization within their organizations. But no matter what, we all face challenges, especially this year. And, most of us hopefully have a seat at the table, but even if we have a seat at the table, there's inconsistent buy-in from those folks that are at the table. And we're not always sure how to influence the people that aren't sure, that don't believe in the importance of having a talent strategy. Goals aren't always communicated or clearly communicated across the organization, which leads to lack of alignment at the executive level. And if executives aren't aligned, that's downstream communication confusion across the organization. And now more than ever, I think that HR departments and talent departments are understaffed, resource constrained. So even before pandemic, HR is somewhat considered a support part of the organization. And now when companies are cutting costs, resources are even more constrained. And I think about this for the Predictive Index in April, we went through a reduction in force. We reduced 25% of our company, went down to about 160 employees, and my team went from 11 to 4. So there's a big difference in the size of and the resources that we had in order to finish out the year. And then, all of this creates engagement scores that are low, and even your good employees generally get de-energized. So that's kind of where we are. I wanted to bring this framework to mind for you. So this is the framework of talent optimization. And if you look at the image, every CEO, CFO has a business strategy, and they're all driving towards business results. But not many companies focus and put an importance on your talent strategy. And that's what's in the middle. That's what gets you the results. And so if you align your talent strategy with your business strategy, you're more apt to achieve what you're looking to achieve. And so when we look in the framework, it really starts with design. So figuring out the work to be done, aligning people around that, and then hiring the right people to do the job, and then inspiring them to perform, and then regularly diagnosing engagement. And so that's really the framework for talent optimization and your talent strategy. So this is where we're going to ask you to take out a piece of paper. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to go through four main core pieces of what I believe to be an important part of your talent strategy. I'm going to describe the ideal state. If that sounds like your organization, you'd give yourself a 3. If maybe you're doing some of those things, you'd give yourself a 2. And if you're nowhere near there, you'd give yourself a 1. And so we'll go through that and then we'll add them up. So first is talent seat at the table. So in the ideal state, it's you as the head of talent or potentially your boss has a seat at the table. And not only do they have a seat at the table, but they are looked at as the subject matter expert across the organization for anything to do with culture, people, compensation, general philosophies, and they're looked to as the expert. Your CEO, your CFO are consulting that person and their team to make decisions and to drive results. So if that sounds like your organization, you give yourself a 3. If your head of talent maybe reports into the CFO or doesn't necessarily have the buy-in from the executive level, maybe a 2. And if you're more tactical HR department, you give yourself a 1. Next is talent strategy. So ideal state is that, we're almost a quarter into 2021. So ideal state is in 2020 that you looked at your goals for 2021. You looked at what we call who's in the room, who's in the building, and who's on the street. So you've identified the people that you need in or the people in your organization that you have, the gaps that you might have in order to achieve your goals. You've identified who else you can pull in from the organization to maybe take on certain projects, or you've determined where you had to go out in the street and you've planned that out for the course of the year. If that sounds like your organization, you're going to give yourself a 3, somewhere close to that a 2. And if you haven't done any of your planning or forecasting for resource allocation and talent, you'd give yourself a 1. Third, teams are aligned around the work to be done. So this means that you've identified your priorities for the year. You've identified what teams are needed in order to do that, and they're aligned around the goals. So your teams understand what they need to achieve, what metrics they're going to be evaluated against, and those milestones. And if that sounds like your organization, you'll give yourself a 3. Maybe if you've communicated to part of the organization or you've started to communicate, they're not aligned, give yourself a 2. And then if you haven't done any of that, you give yourself a 1. And then lastly is engagement and culture are strong. So ideally, you've gone through an engagement survey in 2020, you've taken action on that, you've communicated to your organization the actions that you're taking, you either have done another engagement survey or have one planned for this year, and you've set up your action planning meetings. Because we all know that if you ask for feedback and you don't deliver and respond to it, it's worse than actually not asking for it in the first place. So if that sounds like you give yourself a 3, a 2 if you're somewhere close to there, and a 1 if you don't even have that on your books. And so what you're going to do now is just add up your scores. So I'll give you a second to do that, and then we're going to go through 3 action plans based on your scores. Okay, great. So if your scores are 0 to 4, it is the time to act. You need to do something now. And it's, there's a problem within your organization. You've got to figure it out. So the first thing that you can do as the head of talent is figure out your business strategy. Make sure you understand it. Talk to your CEO, talk to your CFO. Ensure that you get what the business is trying to achieve. And then get your executive team aligned around the importance of having a people plan. And that framework I showed you earlier just shows you how important people are in order to achieve results. And you have got to kind of take an assessment, who's on the team, identify your dynamics of your team. So how people work well together, strengths of the team, blind spots, any obstacles that might present themselves in order for you to achieve those results, and then get alignment around that. You have to start thinking about how you're going to retain your high performers, and start looking at programs that might be important: career development, career pathing, professional development. All of those types of things are super important to high performers. Okay, so if you've scored from a 5 to 9, you're getting there. You've definitely done some groundwork. Maybe it's inconsistent. First thing you can do is ensure your executive team is aligned around the business strategy. So, so you have one, but make sure that everyone understands, why it is what you're trying to achieve, what the goals are. You're going to go through a talent review. We do this every year. Our leadership team, so directors and above, go through a process just to look at talent across the organization. It's a process that gives us insight into who's on the team. It identifies our hard performers, where we have gaps, and it really helps us to identify, like, if we don't fix those gaps, we're not going to achieve our results. We do this once a year. And then prioritize the work to be done and who will be doing it. Identify which teams need to focus on what projects at what time of the year, and that really allows you to be able to pace out your talent plan over the course of the year. And then schedule those engagement surveys. Once they're on the calendar, it won't be one of those things that you're fitting in. It won't be a surprise to your leadership team. Get those engagement surveys on the calendar and your action planning meetings on the calendar so they happen. And then lastly, if you scored 10 plus, you're crushing it, great work. But as we know, the work is never done. So again, ensuring that your business strategy is aligned with your talent strategy. You want to make sure you're communicating the goals and metrics across the company. So from your highest levels to your individual contributors, ensure that everyone's rowing in the same direction and they know what the company is focusing on. You want to make sure you've developed your 12-month hiring plan. So looking out over the course of the year, of the next 12 to 18 months, who's in the room, who's in the building, who's on the street, super important. And again, scheduling those engagement surveys, I think it's one of the most important things, especially now in this environment with so much changing for people at home and at work. We've been doing one every 6 months, and it's super helpful. And then start codifying your back to work plan. So hopefully doors going to be opening soon for most businesses. Even if you are allowing remote work, things will change. Right now we're all on the same playing field for the most part because we're all home, and then we're going to go back and have this hybrid model and figure out what have we learned that would continue to make us better over the course of the year. And that's really it. So that's my presentation. I think that having that talent strategy is super important, and getting alignment to make sure that it's set up to achieve your business results.